In a university filled with the galaxy's smartest alien students, humans are seen as weak and foolish. The class laughs at stupid humans without knowing their professor is actually from Earth. Professor Reed, a human disguised inside old machinery, teaches the students about the true strength of humanity. His lessons challenge everything the students believed, about humans, about survival, and about intelligence. The story is tense, emotional, and full of surprising truths. The stakes are high. These alien students must face the uncomfortable reality that they have misunderstood humans all along, and that humans' unpredictable nature may be the galaxy's most dangerous power. The lecture hall was packed. Bright lights bounced off shiny walls and strange shapes floated in the air. This was Hall G9, one of the most important places in the galaxy's top university. Inside, 912 students sat in rows. They came from many planets and species, each one different and strange. Some had feathers, some had tentacles, some glowed softly. All were here to study the one subject that everyone agreed was simple: humans. The aliens whispered and laughed quietly, waiting for the fun to start. This class was famous for one thing: making humans look weak and foolish. The professor was supposed to be an expert on human psychology, but everyone thought humans were primitive. Many thought they barely deserved the name intelligent. At the front of the hall, a small machine moved slowly. It was an M7 scrubber, old technology that no one used anymore. It creaked and groaned as it polished the floor, making a dull noise that no one cared about. No one noticed the machine at first. It was just part of the background. Then, from the middle of the room, a student made a joke. His voice was full of laughter and mockery. "We need more duct tape," he said in a bad human accent. The whole room burst into laughter. More jokes followed, each one more mocking than the last. Za, a tall alien with flickering translucent skin, sneered. "They call it rocket science as if it requires intelligence. My clutch mother said humans poison themselves for fun." The Gravari student near her added, "They call it coffee." The laughter grew louder. They repeated old stereotypes, enjoying their feeling of superiority. But no one noticed the M7 scrubber. Slowly, the machine stopped cleaning. Its joints creaked, the old metal making painful sounds. The single red eye of the machine swiveled toward the loudest student. The room fell silent. The student stared in shock. Suddenly, a panel on the machine's chest burst open. A hand reached out, a human hand, scarred and worn. Then a second hand, gripping the edge. A man pulled himself out, brushing dust from his old clothes. His boots made a soft sound as they touched the clean floor. He looked around, calm and steady. The silence grew heavy. His eyes scanned the room and finally stopped on the student who made the joke. The man's voice was quiet but clear. "It's a fair point. We're not natural swimmers." The man started walking toward the podium. His steps were calm but strong. "But," he said, "we built boats to cross the oceans and submarines to explore the depths. We turned a weakness into a game, a way to survive, and a tool for power." He set a heavy bag on the podium with a soft thud. Then, pulling out a folder wrapped in silver duct tape, he said, "We are the only species to see danger and ask, how can I use this?" His eyes were gray, like old concrete, steady and sharp. "I am Professor Reed. I will be your instructor for this course on human psychology." The room was frozen. The students realized they had been mocking a human, one who had been right beside them, hidden in a machine the whole time. Za was the first to speak. Her voice was shaky but curious. "This is unusual. How can you teach us about humans when you are one?" Reed smiled thinly, a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Who better to teach you about a dangerous world than the one who evolved from it? We adapt. We observe. We get inside your systems by being what you think is unimportant." He turned to the holographic board. "Let's begin with the first lesson, the power of being underestimated. The students listened, some uneasy, some intrigued. Reed pulled out a worn pen and wrote words on the board in jagged handwriting, cognitive apex. You measure evolution by technology, he said. We measure it by adaptation. He paused. You evolved from predators or prey. Humans evolved from both. Then we moved beyond. A student raised a tentacle. That is not logical. Evolution does not work with purpose. Reed shook his head. It doesn't, unless your species invented purpose. We didn't evolve to be strong or fast. We evolved to see the strong and fast and think, that tastes good with salt. The room filled with nervous laughter, unsure if the joke was real. Another student asked, humans are violent and warlike. How does that help evolution? Violence is history, Reed said. Every species has a history of violence. Humans wear theirs like a sweater, ugly but real. He pulled out a battered tablet, cracked and taped. You say humans are unstable. I say we are flexible. The students shifted, discomfort growing. Reed moved to the board and drew a circle. Inside, he wrote, Lesson 1, Humor. Tell me, he said, what makes your species laugh? The tentacled student answered, incongruity. Things that don't fit. Things that fail. Reed nodded. Good. Now tell me why you were laughing at humans. The room was silent. Because humans scare you, Reed said. We don't follow your rules. We survive what should kill us, fail at what should be easy, and succeed at the impossible. We are chaos with a graduation certificate. A student protested, chaos is inferior to order. Reed smiled. You have had space flight for thousands of years. We only for 2 centuries. You still use the same drives your ancestors did. We change because we get bored. He touched the holographic projector like a simple tool and showed a picture, Apollo 11. Look at this spacecraft. Less power than your lunch orders. Heat shielding glued by hand. 3 humans sat on top of explosives and went anyway. The room was silent, stunned. Why? Reed asked. Because someone bet us we couldn't. The students sat with heavy thoughts. Their laughter from before was gone, replaced by quiet respect and unease. Reed gathered his papers and said, for the next weeks, you will learn about the real human mind. Not the jokes. The truth. Fair warning, you may not like it. He smiled faintly and said, now, let's begin. The days passed quickly in the great lecture hall. The students who once laughed now listened with wide eyes. Professor Reed was a different kind of teacher. He didn't give easy answers. He challenged everything they thought they knew. On the second day, the holographic board lit up with a vast, glowing tree. This, said Reed, chewing on a tough piece of jerky, is the Van Conflict tree. It shows how your species solves problems. The tree's branches stretched out like a spiderweb. Each node was a decision, glowing with numbers and colors. The system promised to end war and fight with perfect logic. Violence becomes impossible when all outcomes are pre-calculated, a student said proudly. Reed smiled with a strange calm. And how long does it take to calculate a solution? 73 cycles, the student answered. Then the 6 invaded on cycle 74, Reed said. The students froze. Reed leaned forward. Your tree fails because it assumes everyone follows the rules. Humans don't. He pulled up a grainy photograph. Soldiers in mud, freezing cold, voices in different languages, crying for their mothers. This is the Great War, Earth, 1914. Enemies stopped fighting and sang Silent Night. Then they played football in no man's land. No algorithm predicted that. The room held its breath. The tentacles stopped moving. Reed said softly, humans are the worst and best versions of themselves at once. Your systems calculate peace. We stumble into it covered in mud. Another student whispered, that is terrifying. Reed nodded and brought up charts and graphs. You all assume actors are rational. Humans aren't. We act, then make reasons after. Chaos runs on caffeine and spite. That night, many students could not sleep. The ideas rolled through their minds like storms. Later in the week, Reed talked about fear. The Gravari species have a calm state. Their brains flood with chemicals that stop panic. It's perfect. A Gravari student named Shvel nodded. Our calm state never fails. It saves lives. Reed showed a picture of Apollo 13, 3 humans trapped in a damaged ship far from Earth. Their oxygen was running out. The system told them they would die. How did they survive? Reed asked. Calmness, Shvel replied. No, said Reed, panic saved them. Panic plus creativity makes impossible solutions. They fixed their ship with duct tape and underwear. Your calm state would have accepted death. Shvel looked confused. Reed smiled. Luck is finding water. Adaptation is learning to drink your own filtered urine. Humans survive because we panic, try everything, and refuse to give up. Za, who had listened carefully, stood up. You romanticize madness. Reed didn't flinch. We are hypocrites, he said. We love and hate. We build peace and weapons. We are both good and evil, always at the same time. He showed pictures of Mother Teresa and mushroom clouds, children laughing and soldiers screaming. We hold contradictions. We survive because we accept them. The class fell silent, the weight of truth heavy on their minds. One student asked, if aggression is primitive, why do some species keep it? Reed looked serious. Your species buried aggression, called it polite words or protection. Humans admit what we are. He showed news of a violent trade deal that forced colonists to move. Your species pretends to be peaceful but perfects violence. Humans try to be better. You try to look better. Reed's voice was low. You lost because you threw away aggression but kept peace. The dean arrived like a storm. 6 arms moved with perfect anger. Professor Reed, your methods are unorthodox. Reed laughed. My methods are human. The dean left, unhappy, but Reed kept teaching. He asked, why didn't the dean get my joke about Star Trek? No one answered, said Reed. Humor can be a weapon. Humans weaponized laughter. The final days came, and the students were different. They no longer laughed at humans. They tried to understand. Crickster said, it's not about duct tape. It's a mindset. Good enough is better than perfect. Reed smiled. Now you're thinking like a human. He spoke of fiction, stories humans tell that are lies for fun. We create worlds that don't exist to prepare for the real world. We rewrite reality with stories. Za asked, why? Practice, said Reed. Stories are simulations. They help us survive. Reed showed a map of Earth covered in stories. Humans survive because we rewrite our stories. The students were quiet, thoughtful. Reed's final lesson, humans survive not because we are best but because we refuse to be anything else. He handed out their final assignment, write why they should be grateful humans are peaceful now. As the students left, Za asked, why were we wrong about humans? Reed packed his bag. Because weakness is strength. Because humans weaponized chaos. He walked out, whistling a sad song. In halls across the galaxy, students carried the lesson, humans are special not for being better, but for never giving up. The new semester began quietly, but inside each student, the storm of ideas from Professor Reed's lessons raged on. They walked the halls differently now, some with wonder, some with fear. Humans were no longer the joke. They were a puzzle, a force of nature that challenged everything the galaxy believed. Reed's classroom was now a place of tension and curiosity. Students who once mocked now debated fiercely. The subjects grew darker and deeper. One morning, Reed stood before the class, eyes sharp and clear. "Today," he said, "we will study human combat philosophy. No one will get hurt physically, but your minds may feel the wounds." The room went silent. Reed began. Humans fight not just with weapons, but with mind and spirit. We use chaos, unpredictability, and sometimes madness. He pulled up images of ancient human warriors, ragged, exhausted, but fierce. Our history is full of battles where odds were impossible. We survived by breaking every rule. A student asked, "But how can chaos be controlled? Isn't it dangerous?" Reed smiled thinly. "Chaos is dangerous. But order without flexibility is death. Humans are like fire, wild, unpredictable, but life-giving." He spoke of ancient duels, where warriors relied not on strength alone, but on surprise and trickery. We learned to use our weaknesses as weapons. Our fear as fuel. The class was captivated. Reed continued, "Our combat philosophy is simple: expect the unexpected. When your enemy prepares for one thing, you do another. You confuse, disrupt, and adapt faster." He showed videos of soldiers using strange tactics, fake retreats, sudden attacks, even humor to unnerve opponents. Humans laugh in the face of danger. We mock death itself. That is power. The students exchanged uneasy glances. "Now," Reed said, "let me show you something." He pulled up an old, blurry photo of a small group of humans huddled in mud, barely alive. "This is the Battle of Stalingrad. The city was destroyed. Men fought in ruins, in freezing cold. They had nothing but will to survive." Reed's voice grew soft. "Many died. But the survivors learned to fight not just for victory, but for each other." A Gravari student whispered, "That is beautiful." Reed nodded. Humans create meaning in chaos. That is why we fight. The days passed with more stories, more lessons. Reed told of astronauts floating in space, facing death with jokes and stubborn hope. He spoke of artists who painted while bombs fell. Of children who played games in shelters. One evening, Za stayed after class. She approached Reed, her skin flickering softly. "Professor," she said, "you teach us about contradictions, love and war, hope and fear. How do humans live with so much at once?" Reed looked tired but smiled. "Because we must. There is no simple truth for us. We hold many truths, even if they fight inside us." Za nodded slowly. "Your species is complicated." "More than that," Reed said. "We are real. Not perfect. Not simple. But real." The next day, Reed handed out an assignment: write about what fear means to humans. Students groaned but also felt a strange respect. One student, Melgris, raised a question. If humans survive through chaos and contradiction, how can peace ever last? Reed's eyes narrowed. Peace is not the absence of chaos. It is the balance between chaos and order. He told them about the 1914 Christmas truce again, enemies who stopped fighting to sing and share food. That moment, Reed said, was chaos winning over order. It showed that even in war, humans can choose hope. The class was quiet. They felt the weight of the story. Reed ended the lesson with a challenge. Learn this: humans survive because we fight for meaning, even when the world breaks apart. Weeks later, the dean returned. This time, less angry, more thoughtful. "Professor Reed," the dean said, "your lessons are unorthodox but effective." Reed grinned. "Thank you. Sometimes, the truth needs to shake foundations." The semester neared its end. Students had changed. They had laughed, questioned, doubted, and learned. On the last day, Reed asked them, "Who can tell me what it means to be human?" The answers were many and varied. Some spoke of stubbornness, others of creativity, some of love and pain. Reed listened carefully. Then he said, "Being human is to live with contradictions and keep moving forward. To build hope on broken ground. To laugh even when tears are close." The hall filled with a quiet energy, respect and awe. Reed smiled, the kind of smile that hides both pain and pride. "You have learned more than facts. You have learned a new way to see the universe." As the students left, Za lingered again. "Professor, will they ever understand humans fully?" Reed looked out the window at the stars. "No. And that's why humans will always surprise the galaxy." The weeks after the final lesson were quiet but charged with new energy. The students carried their questions and revelations with them. The galaxy was vast, full of order and rules, but now a few of its brightest minds saw a flicker of something different, the raw, wild spirit of humanity. Professor Reed returned to his modest quarters on the station. It was a small room, dusty and filled with relics from Earth, old books, photos, and scraps of paper taped together. He sat down with a battered journal and began writing, capturing thoughts that had stirred during the semester. His mind wandered to Earth, a planet of endless contrasts. Cities that never slept, deserts blooming with life, storms named like friends, machines that talked back, and people who smiled through pain. It was a world full of contradictions, much like himself. Suddenly, a knock came at the door. It was Za, hesitant but determined. "Professor Reed," she said softly, "may I come in?" He smiled and nodded. Za sat beside him, her translucent skin pulsing gently. "I wanted to thank you. You showed us something we never expected. That humans are, more than we thought." Reed leaned back. "Thank you, Za. It means more than you know." They talked late into the night, about fear, hope, survival, and the strange human habit of laughing at their own failures. Za confessed, "I was afraid at first. Your stories scared me. Humans seem so chaotic, so unpredictable. How can we trust a species like that?" Reed looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because chaos breeds creativity. Because humans are stubborn. Because sometimes, the best way to survive is to refuse to be broken." Za nodded slowly, understanding dawning. Days later, Reed was called to the faculty council. The hall was filled with dignitaries from across the galaxy, their faces stern. "Professor Reed," the lead counselor began, "your teachings have challenged many of our beliefs. Some see your methods as dangerous." Reed met their gaze. "My lessons are not dangerous. They are necessary. The galaxy must learn that survival is not only about strength or order. It's about adapting to chaos, embracing contradictions." There was silence. Then a counselor spoke, "Your species invented horror as entertainment. You embrace madness. How can we accept that?" Reed smiled faintly. "Because madness is the mirror that reflects reality's true face. And humanity doesn't fear that reflection." The council debated late into the cycle, but Reed's words planted seeds of change. Back in the classroom, students prepared for their final essays. They wrote about duct tape as philosophy, about survival born from chaos, about the strength in contradictions. Za's essay spoke of fear and courage. She wrote, "Humans fear what they cannot control, yet that fear makes them brave. They survive because they refuse to surrender to calm." Another student, Melgris, wrote, "Humans weaponize their flaws. Their chaos is not weakness but power." As the essays circulated, the galaxy began to see humans in a new light. No longer were they laughed at or dismissed. Instead, they were studied, feared, and strangely admired. One evening, Reed stood at the station's observation deck, looking at the stars. Z joined him quietly. "Do you think humans will ever truly be understood?" Reed smiled, eyes reflecting distant lights. No. And that's their greatest advantage. The unknown is a weapon no one can defend against. Za looked at him thoughtfully. Thank you for sharing your truth. Reed nodded. Thank you for being brave enough to listen. Outside, the station hummed softly, a small beacon in the vast dark. Somewhere out there, Earth waited, unpredictable as ever. The final day of the semester dawned with a quiet tension. The students arrived, some nervous, some eager, but all changed. They had laughed at humans once, but now they carried heavy truths in their minds. Professor Reed entered the hall carrying his battered duffel bag. The same one wrapped in duct tape, worn and dusty from years of travel. He smiled a tired, knowing smile. Today, he said, we finish our journey. Who can tell me what they have learned about humans? Tentacles, feathers, scales, and glowing eyes turned toward him. Hands and claws hesitated, then one by one, voices rose. Humans are stubborn. Humans survive against odds that should kill them. Humans hold contradictions inside them and use those contradictions to move forward. Reed nodded, his eyes soft but sharp. You have learned much. But the greatest lesson is this: humans refuse to be anything other than themselves. We do not pretend to be perfect. We embrace chaos, fear, hope, and failure all at once. He paused, then continued. Your species evolved from prey or predator. Humans evolved from stories. We tell ourselves who we want to be, and then become it. A student raised a question. Professor, why do humans laugh at themselves, at danger, at madness? Reed smiled, revealing teeth that some found unsettling. Because laughter is our weapon and our shield. It helps us face the terrible truth, that life is fragile and often absurd. We laugh to survive. Za stepped forward. And the duct tape? Reed chuckled. That is not just tape. It is a philosophy, good enough, holding things together while we keep moving. Imperfect, flexible, and always ready to be fixed. The room filled with a new respect. The students understood now that humans were not weak or foolish but a species that had turned its flaws into power. Reed looked around. You have been my greatest challenge and my greatest honor. Remember this, the universe does not favor the strongest or smartest. It favors the adaptable. The ones willing to press the button just to see what happens. The students applauded, a sound full of warmth and understanding. Reed packed his bag and turned to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back. Remember, he said softly, we invented the button. We hold the universe's secrets in our stubborn hands. Now, go out there and never stop surprising. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. Outside, stars shone cold and bright. But somewhere in the dark, a small planet spun, alive, chaotic, and endlessly unpredictable. And the universe watched, waiting for what humans would do next.